This podcast does not provide medical nor legal advice. Please listen to the complete disclosure at the end of the recording.
Hello and welcome to Everyone Dies, the podcast where we talk about serious illness, dying, death, and bereavement. I'm Marianne Matzo, a nurse practitioner, and I use my experience from working as a nurse for 46 years to help answer your questions about what happens at the end of life.
And I'm Charlie Navarrete, an actor in New York City, and here to offer an every-person viewpoint to our podcast. We are both here because we believe that the more you know, the better prepared you are to make difficult decisions before a crisis hits.
Welcome to this week's show. Please relax, and because of the topic, you might want to get yourself something strong to drink.
Oh, okay, great. I'll be right back, Marianne.
Not you.
So I'm sure.
Maybe get yourself the whole pie instead of just a slice. And thank you for spending the next hour with Charlie and me as we talk about both the blessings and the curses of the mother-daughter relationship and how these connections can last beyond the grave.
Oy vey.
Like the BBC, we see our show as offering entertainment, enlightenment, and education and divided into three halves to address each of these goals. Our main topic is in the second half, so feel free to fast forward to that hubbub-free zone if you want to. In the first half, Charlie has a creative obituary and a recipe you can take to your next funeral lunch. In the second half, I'll be talking about the connections between mothers and their daughters. And in the third half, Charlie has suggestions to improve communications with your mom and the lyrics of a Paul Simon song that got its name from a menu item at a Chinese restaurant. So, Charlie, what's new?
Well, Marianne, in the news of the dead, Lou Conter, last known survivor of the USS Arizona attack in Pearl Harbor, died a couple of weeks ago.
That's right, I read that.
Yeah, he's 102. He was 20 years old when at the time of the attack. So,
jeez, such a boy.
Yeah, the tip of the old chapeau to Mr. Conter.
And that's the last guy.
Yeah.
Or woman, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I can't imagine anybody else would be, that they would have missed anyone else. But as far as we know, yeah, Mr. Conter is the last.
Well, may he rest in peace. And, jeez, too bad.
Yeah.
Too bad he had to go through that and all those other boys, too.
I know. Ugh, can't imagine.
War is hell.
Yes, war is hell. We wanted a recipe from a mom for our recipe of the week. But since we are not rule followers, our recipe comes from an ex-girlfriend. Which one? Well, there are just so many. Anyway, this ex's mom had the best hand-chopped salsa fresca I have ever tasted. The trick for this salsa is marinating the onions and jalapenos in lime juice for about 5 minutes before adding the tomatoes and cilantro. There are 2 tricks to this recipe. 1, hand chop everything. It takes a while, but it is worth it. 2, the marinating is what makes this salsa special. Hope you enjoy. Bon appetit. Oh, that's, what is that, Marianne? Oh, appetit.
Bon appetit.
Thank you, Julia. Now, what follows is the actual obituary of one Lois Ann Harry. Lois Ann Harry of Idaho Falls was reported missing and presumed deceased on Wednesday, October 30th, 2019, when the Cessna Skyhawk she stole and was piloting lost contact with air traffic control over the Gulf of Mexico. Eyewitnesses report Lois was last seen leaving the homestead in the back seat of an Uber wearing dark glasses and an Ushanka. Authorities are baffled by the disappearance of the 88-year-old woman, how she gained access to the aircraft, and who the hell taught her to fly. Even more puzzling are the varied accounts of Mrs. Harry's life by her own children. Her daughters, Linda Spalding and Sherry Mooney, both of Rigby, are certain their mother was a pastry chef and freelance food critic. Daughter Connie Bates of Idaho Falls insists her mother was a professional gambler who dabbled as a seamstress and race car driver. Certainly not a pilot. Sons John and Richard and Gary Peterson, all of Idaho Falls, were less direct about Mrs. Harry's professional life when questioned, glancing furtively at one another and muttering something about square dancing. Lois's stepdaughter, Kathy Bardwell, claims Mrs. Harry was a botanist who ran a chain of recreational marijuana dispensaries in Washington state. Stepson Rick Harry alleges his stepmother was a computer programmer, while Ron and Don Harry maintain she is and always has been a veterinarian specializing in bovine sports medicine and rehabilitation. Two facts remain clear, however. One, Lois had 26 grandchildren from her first marriage to John Peterson and gained 18 grandchildren through her marriage to Albert Harry. She also had a ton of great grandchildren and some number of great great grandchildren. Two, as indicated by a pattern of winks and eye rolls, Lois had at least 5 particular favorite grandchildren. If you are reading this and you think you are one of those fives, you're probably wrong. Lois was born on July 18, 1931, in the vast metropolis of Rexburg, Idaho, to Joseph Dieterle and Nora Rudd Dieterle. She was raised in the even vaster metropolis of Cary, Idaho, with her sister Margaret and her brother Jack. She enjoyed spending time outdoors, playing sports, and hiding in the hayloft when it was time for chores. Being born during the Great Depression shaped Lois's formative years and resulted in a lifetime of frugality, creativity, and cheap mischief. She invented fun by the bushel basket when it was too expensive to buy. She also invented the wireless cell phone charger, but didn't want to brag about it, so she kept her old flip phone even though she never answered it. Lois was Harvard educated by a guy named Jimmy Harvard, who taught her how to count cards and jackpot. When the gig was up, she became an avid supporter of the Canadian free market movement, to which she donated thousands of dollars. She was also an active member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Lois enjoyed reading, knitting, puzzles, pranks, advising her grandchildren as their conscience, and getting UPS deliveries from her secret admirer. She loved her life, her family, and her friends, but would prefer that you not follow her to Bermuda. Lois was preceded by her parents, siblings, husband, 3 grandchildren, and Uncle Skippy. Thank you, Mom, Grammy, Oma, Grape, Meemaw Beep, for your sense of humor. We love you so much. Bless your heart.
Isn't that sweet?
It is sweet, and it's all true.
Every word of it.
Yes. Please go to our webpage for this week's recipe for hand-chopped salsa fresca and additional resources for this program. Your tax-deductible donations are always welcome so that we can continue to offer you quality programming. Thank you in advance for making your donation at www.everyonedies.org. That's every, the number one, dies.org. You can also donate a bit every week at our site on Patreon. Just go to www.patreon.com and search for Everyone Dies. Patreon is spelled Patreon. Marianne?
Thank you, Charlie. If you are a woman and have a daughter, or for that matter, a mother, you know how these relationships can be one of life's greatest blessings. If you're truly honest, you would also admit it is at times one of your greatest curses. The bond between mothers and daughters is a remarkable and complex relationship that continuously evolves and is sometimes like a Rorschach test. You look at it, and sometimes what you see is more of a reflection of you and where you are in your life than what is actually there. The emotional responses to our mothers and daughters are the result of how our brains process emotions. We experience emotions and our mood is regulated in the corticolimbic circuitry of our brains. This circuitry is made up of the amygdala, which condenses information from short-term memory to long-term memory, the hippocampus, where problems are solved, and the ventromedial prefrontal cortex that processes risk, fear, and anxiety. Now, when scientists studied 35 healthy families, they documented positive associations in these areas between biological mothers and their daughters. This association was significantly greater than the mother-son, father-daughter, and father-son associations. The study suggested that the corticolimbic circuitry, which has also been implicated in a wide range of processes, including mood, shows a matrilineal specific transmission, meaning, God help us, part of our brains work just like our mothers. The mother-daughter dynamic is unique, powerful, and a remarkably strong bond. Mothers and daughters can share deep emotional connections that often develop at birth and are strengthened throughout their lives. Mothers serve as role models for their daughters' perception of roles, self-identity, and self-worth, and they can bond over shared experiences, such as how society treats and what it expects from women, menstrual cycles, and physical changes. When girls are little, they often want to be just like their mom. But as they grow into adolescence, the mother-daughter dynamic evolves. As the need for independence develops, it starts a gradual shift in the mother-daughter relationship. This may bring communication challenges, especially as adolescents explore different ways of seeing themselves, new social situations, and emotional experiences. This dance of attachment and separation sees the daughter seeking more freedom while maintaining a secure emotional anchor with her mom. Understanding the dynamic between a mother and a daughter is the basis for nurturing and strengthening relationships. The connection between these women comes from the awareness and empathy and helps them to grow together. Researchers have explored the effect of the death of a parent on both men and women and documented that a father's death led to a more negative effect for sons than daughters, and a mother's death leads to more negative effects for daughters than sons. Problematic effects of parent loss are reflected more in men's physical health reports than women's. Now, 100 years ago, the average life expectancy in the United States was approximately 57.6 years for men and 60.6 years for women. As of 2023, the average life expectancy for females is about 79 years and for male, 73 years. It is most typical now for individuals to experience the death of parents during adulthood rather than during their childhood. Therefore, most adults have outstanding ties and affectional bonds with their parents, both as children and adults, before the death of first one parent and then the second parent occurs. The death of parents is a typical life course transition for adults that can affect both psychological and physical well-being. Children are socialized from an early age to identify with their same-gender parent, which may create more distance from the opposite gender parent. Research studies have validated that the mother-daughter intergenerational bond is characterized by the greatest closeness of all generational bonds, and that fathers and sons show evidence of complex relationship that involve more sharing of the life world than fathers and daughters do. Mother-daughter patterns of closeness strengthen with aging because mothers and daughters assume together more of the responsibility for kin-keeping, that is, working to maintain and nurture ties in the generations below and above them, as well as ties with horizontal family members like spouse, siblings, cousins, brothers, and sisters-in-law. Part of the responsibility for family ties includes responsibility for caregiving of family members who are not able to take care of themselves. Older adults are not dying suddenly from acute illnesses like infections as they did in previous century, but are instead experiencing longer periods of chronic disease with self-care limitations prior to death. Overall, women tend to assume caregiving role for the parent more than men do, and because women typically live longer than men, that caregiving is usually for the mother. In addition to differences between sons and daughters' caregiving of their mother, the reactions to their death can also be different. Specifically, sons whose mothers died after experiencing limitations in self-care were more distressed than when a mother died who had had no limitations. But daughters whose mother who died who had no care limitations experienced more distress than daughters whose mother with care limitations when they died. Now, this makes sense to me if you think about the caregiving the daughter may be doing for her mother, as opposed to the healthy mom, who the daughter can go out with, socialize, and relax around. If the mom is healthy, there's the opportunity for shared investment, mutual care, and just having fun together. And it makes sense that the daughter is going to miss that more than the caregiving role. Part of growing older with our mothers is beginning to see them as women who are separate from ourselves. Now, this may seem a bit strange since much of our daughter's life, they have been working to differentiate themselves from their mother. But it's typically not easy to see our mothers as having their own desires, passions, and inner life. And as a mother, I've never really tried to portray myself without the warts, pain, or insecurity. Right or wrong, I was kind of tried to be real. Real people have all of those and more. Pretending otherwise sets an impossible bar for our daughters to meet. Resilience in our relationship is partly due to the ability of mothers and daughters to handle upset feelings better in their relationship compared to other connections in their lives. After all, there's a tremendous investment to carry a child inside your body, nurture them throughout their lives, and sacrifice to meet their needs. The mother-daughter dynamic develops, and for many, mothers continue to mother their daughters, and the daughters still seek approval from them, even in late life. Which leads us to why the death of your mother is a life-changing event. Regardless of the quality of the mother-child relationship, her death will have a profound impact. Though it's nearly impossible to believe, all of the feelings you're likely to feel may not be negative. You may feel relief, particularly if your mother struggled with chronic conditions. You may feel released from conflict or pressure that came with a caregiving relationship. You may even feel a renewed sense of gratitude for your own life and a strong motivation to soak up every minute available to you and your remaining loved ones. Death can knit together as much as it can tear apart. But here are some ways your mother's death might change you. When your mother dies, it can feel like the world stops moving. You may experience shock and anxiety as you grapple with the conflict of someone being present in every way, but also physically gone forever. Your brain will struggle to comprehend this sudden absence. The grieving process will be unpredictable. Waves of shock, sadness, and intense emotion will come and go. You'll feel triggers that release pent-up emotions, sometimes unexpectedly. Physiological reactions like crying, rapid breathing, and digestive issues can be your body's natural way of coping with grief. Even though brains are remarkable at adapting to changing circumstances, this skill can complicate grief. The thread of a mother's existence runs throughout your life, from childhood to adulthood. Her absence will force you to adapt to a new reality, whether you are ready to or not. At the same time, everything around you will continue: seasons, holidays, and the daily routines. But your world will feel different. Coping mechanisms kick in during the initial days after her death, but gradually you'll face the depth of your grief. Remember that everyone's experience is unique and there's no right way to grieve. Take care during this difficult period and allow yourself to process your emotions at your own pace. Your mother's death will change you, and that change is likely to be the only predictable part of the entire process. It's a process that can break, overwhelm, but also remake you. The only way out is through riding each wave of grief as it comes, and through it all, remembering to breathe and keep moving forward, a little bit like a shark, without attacking everyone along the way. Charlie, any thoughts or questions?
It's interesting you use the metaphor. It's like a shark, and I know you added, without attacking anyone. I don't know. I've just seen so many, well, friends now that were all older. Their mothers die, um, and well, yes, I've seen. People, a type of relief and release, as you said, that finally, mom's dead, not in a negative way, but you're right, it just takes a lot of pressure off. But I've also just seen a lot of people who are are not over it. There's just still something that lingers from maybe a bad relationship with their mother or even just a mediocre relationship with their mother, and they seem to carry that with them. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean that. Um,
Well, it can be either way. You can have a great relationship with your mom and just, as children, we're all egocentric, meaning we think the world revolves around us. And our mom is probably one of the only people who will help perpetuate that myth.
yeah.
And and so when she's gone and there's nobody who's telling you, you're smart, you're beautiful, you can do anything, all the things, that really great mom might do, who's giving you that affirmation? And if you've had a really abusive mom or mom who didn't meet those
Mhm.
needs, then you can say, well, I'm glad she's not being mean to me anymore, but I can't resolve it either because she's gone. So it's sort of like either way, it's very difficult.
Yeah, and I think that, to your point, is just uh, I I speak for myself. I know with my mother, I finally had to, not finally had to, but I worked my way into, with help from my therapist, to see her as the flawed person she is, not the flawed mother, a flawed person.
You
And
you could you had to start to learn to see her as a woman. And that's what's really hard is that
well,
we don't want, we don't want to see them, or it takes a long time to see them as a person with their
yes,
own stuff.
yes, absolutely. And it was one of the best moments of my life. It was a long trail, when I finally was able to look at her again, not as a, but for me, Marianne, not as a woman, as a person,
Hmm.
and slowly just to see her faults, what I liked, the many things I disliked, and it was tough, but saying that to her. And when we finish, there's a list of things of how to deal with it, but just listen to her and then learn to tell her that I disagree and that I don't agree with her when she says something. It bothers me, and it was nice. But then eventually down the road, I would never say to her when she said something I thought was crazy. I would never say to her, "God, are you full of shit?" But like in a nice, funny way. but it did get to that point with us, and so that
Mm-hmm.
when she died, we talk about a good death. It was I was happy for her that she would not be in pain anymore, both physical
Mm-hmm.
and emotional. And
Mm-hmm.
till the very end of her life, she would still talk about her mother. My grandmother died when my mother was 5 years old
Mm-hmm.
in a rural town in Mexico, and just all that dynamic. Her father and her brothers just no empathy for her, for my mother at all. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, that just, my mother died at 91. And I'm telling you, that stayed with her until the day she died. You know,
Absolutely. Because as a 5-year-old, how do you
exactly.
process that profound loss? And in a
Yeah.
sense, she's in relation to her mother, the relationship with her mother, she's always 5.
Yes. Oh my God, Marianne. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, she's always five. Oh shit.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, unconsciously. And it was great. Eventually, she and I were able to talk about that. And and when she did, it just broke my heart. It really did.
Mhm.
I then understood everything, and I was so grateful. And I told her later, I was so grateful that she told
Mhm.
me. Yeah. So, yeah. Um, there was something. What did you say about? Oh yeah, you said something about family ties. Um, but I'm wondering now. I mean, I mean, I remember the family ties. When we were younger, like in our 20s. But now in our 60s, and because things, culture and everything has changed so much in America, do you see family ties as the same as they were like when we were kids? Because it seems, what am I saying here? It's just family. A lot of times I've seen, and also for myself. I mean, I love my siblings dearly, but I have so many friends and acquaintances. Yeah, family ties are not their family. It is, friends in the building, friends they have, their pets.
Mhm.
It's more and more that those are family ties rather than, you know, blood, blood relatives.
Well, a lot depends on if you're still in the neighborhood where you grew up. Like my siblings were I was the only one who left and moved away. So in many ways for them, it is well, it was very different for them than it was for me because, I'd come home a couple times a year or whatever. It
Mhm.
was different. And the responsibilities were different, and the requirements were different, and the relationships were different. So, no, it's not the same. But for some people, it is the same. But the point I think for us is to say, well, look at your own life. Look at how your relationships are and what of this resonates with you and what parts of it don't. Learn from
Yeah.
the things that we say that say, yeah, that feels like something I can use in my life, and the things that don't, you say, well, I might tell my friend to listen to that because that's what she's going through.
Well, I think, yeah, that's it. You just got to look at yourself. You got to talk to yourself sometimes. This is what works for
I
me.
talk to
This doesn't
myself
work for me.
all the time. Some of the most intelligent conversations I have, Charlie, are with
Well,
myself.
yeah, there we are. Yes. But yeah, I think it's a good thing. Just, yeah, folks just ask themselves, you know, why don't I like this? Why does this make me uncomfortable, or why does this make me comfortable? Yeah. Yep. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
In our third half, improving communication with your mom as an adult involves understanding, empathy, and active effort. Here are some practical tips to enhance your interactions. One, active listening. When your mom speaks, give her your full attention. Avoid interrupting or thinking about your response while she's talking. Show that you're engaged by nodding, making eye contact, and asking follow up questions. 2.
And stay off your phone.
And what do you mean?
Well, you know how kids will be on their phones
Oh, yeah. Now I
texting
don't.
or doing things.
Boy, talk about generational. You said that, and I'm thinking, what the hell are you talking about? You're right. I wouldn't do that. But yeah, there's so
Right.
many younger people I have to interact
But our
with. and
kids
they
would.
do. Yeah, they do. Absolutely. Punks. Number 2, empathize. Put yourself in her shoes. Consider her feelings, experiences, and perspective. Acknowledge her emotions, even if you don't agree with them. For example, say, I can see why you'd feel that way. 3, choose the right time. Timing matters. Avoid discussing sensitive topics when either of you is stressed, tired, or busy. Find a calm moment to have meaningful conversations. 4, be respectful. Treat your mom with kindness and respect. Remember that she's an individual with her own thoughts and feelings. Avoid raising your voice or using hurtful language. 5, set boundaries. As adults, both of you need boundaries. Be clear about what you're comfortable discussing and what topics are off limits. Respect her boundaries as well. 6, use I statements. Instead of saying you always or you never, express your feelings using I statements. For example, I feel hurt when, or I would appreciate it if. 7, express gratitude. Show appreciation for the positive aspects of your relationship. Thank her for her support, love, and guidance. A simple thank you can go a long way. 8, find common interests. Discover shared hobbies or interests. Engage in activities together that you both enjoy. It can create bonding moments and improve communication. Apologize when necessary. 9, apologize when necessary. If you make a mistake or hurt her feelings, apologize sincerely. Swallow your pride and admit when you were wrong. 10, practice patience. Change takes time. Be patient with yourself and your mom as you both learn and grow. Celebrate small victories along the way. Remember, building a better relationship with your mom is an ongoing process. Keep an open heart, be willing to learn, and cherish the moments you share.
Mm.
And yes, it is easier said than done, but it really needs to be done. And Marianne, just in my experience, it's just for a while it needed to be done for me. It had nothing to do with my mother, but then eventually it all worked out. It was not an easy journey.
No. And having been on that journey with you, Charlie, I agree.
Yes. 2 for the road. Next on the Everyone Dies playlist, Mother and Child Reunion by Paul Simon and Roy Halley. Now, this song was inspired by Simon's grief over the death of his family's dog. He has said that the title has its origin in a chicken and egg dish called Mother and Child Reunion that Simon saw on a Chinese restaurant's menu.
That is so funny.
I know. I don't know. I just imagine, because he lived and grew up in New York. I just imagine him as down in Chinatown. It's some cheap little joint, and yeah, coming across this dish. Very cool. No, I would not give you false hope on this strange and mournful day. But the mother and child reunion is only a motion away. Oh, little darling of mine, I can't for the life of me remember a sadder day. I know they say let it be, but it just don't work out that way. And the course of a lifetime runs over and over again. No, I would not give you false hope on this strange and mournful day, but the mother and child reunion is only a motion away. Oh, little darling of mine, I just can't believe it so. Though it seems strange to say, I never been laid so low, in such a mysterious way, and the course of a lifetime runs over and over again. But I would not give you false hope, no, on this strange and mournful day, when the mother and child reunion is only a motion away. And that's it for this week's episode. Please stay tuned for the continuing saga of Everyone Dies, and thank you for listening. This is Charlie Navarrete. And from writer Mark Twain, let us endeavor so to live that when we come to die, even the undertaker will be sorry.
And I'm Marianne Matzo, and we'll see you next week. Remember, every day is a gift.
This podcast does not provide medical advice. All discussion on this podcast, such as treatments, dosages, outcomes, charts, patient profiles, advice, messages, and any other discussion are for informational purposes only and are not a substitute for professional medical advice or treatment. Always seek the advice of your primary care practitioner or other qualified health providers with any questions that you may have regarding your health. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard from this podcast. If you think you may have a medical emergency, call your doctor or 911 immediately. Everyone Dies does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, practitioners, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned in this podcast. Reliance on any information provided in this podcast by persons appearing on this podcast at the invitation of Everyone Dies or by other members is solely at your own risk.